Yeah, what's up, guys? Coming at you today with a bit of a special one. Today we're going to be making a filet mignon with a garlic parmesan asparagus and some little mini roasted potatoes. Now, we're doing this my favorite way to cook a steak by searing it in a cast iron pan and then finishing it in the oven with a good amount of basting with some garlic butter. And even better yet, this meal cost about $15–16, which looking this up on Outback Steakhouse's menu will run you about $32. It's always better to cook at home, and honestly, I think it's even better than you can get at a steakhouse anyways. So, without further ado, let's get started.
Alright guys, we're going to get started here by laying out our filet mignon on a plate. We're going to cover that with a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Make sure you cover both sides. We're then going to pick it up and roll that in the salt and pepper that's on the plate to get a little bit of seasoning on the edges here. As soon as that's done, we're going to go put that plate in the fridge to let it rest for a minute and then scrub our hands. After you put that cut in the fridge, we're going to get started on our side dishes here. Now I do have the oven preheated to about 400 degrees while I'm cutting these potatoes. I'm about to make use of one of my favorite little cooking hacks. I always keep deli containers and deli lids around because they are great for leftovers and great for all kinds of stuff in the kitchen. Now, as you can see here, I took 2 deli lids and laid out some potatoes down on it. This also works if you're cutting cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes in half and you want to do a large amount like relatively quickly. All you do is get 2 lids and use them to sandwich whatever you're trying to cut in half. Then literally just run your knife right through the middle of them. You can do an entire tray of potatoes in like 30 seconds. It's awesome. So what I didn't show there was after cutting these potatoes in half, I took them over to the sink, washed them, scrubbed them off real nice, brought them back over, laid them out on the cutting board with some paper towels now, and we're just drying them off. As soon as you dry these potatoes, we're going to be throwing them back into a bowl, and we're going to be adding a little bit of olive oil here. Go ahead and give that a good mix, just get them like nice and covered with all that oil. And as soon as you do that, we're going to be adding a little bit of salt, pepper, and some Italian seasoning. Now I'm going ahead and adding those seasonings here, then we're going to get shaken up real nice again. Just get a nice even coating of your seasoning on all these potatoes. Now you might notice I'm making a little bit much here for only one steak. I like to cook extra sides when I'm cooking as a little mini meal prep because later in the week then I can just cook a chicken breast, cook a little piece of fish, and I've already got sides ready to go for a full meal. As soon as you're done seasoning, we're just going to lay them out on a aluminum foil lined baking tray. Now that our oven's preheated to 400 degrees, we're going to throw those up on the top rack and let them go. And now that the potatoes are in, they're going to take about 40 minutes or so to really crisp up and cook well. So we're going to start working on our asparagus here. All I'm doing is adding some freshly minced garlic, a little bit more olive oil, and throw in some salt and pepper as well. And we're laying these out in another aluminum foil lined baking tray. I'm using a small brownie tin. You can use whatever works. Honestly, it's a little bit crowded here for the amount of asparagus I'm using. If I had another big baking tray, I would have been using another big baking tray, but it works. So as soon as we're done with the asparagus here, we're going to get it mixed up. Then throw that in the oven on the lower rack right below our potatoes. And then we're going to be starting our steak. Now as soon as these are in, I've already got the cast iron pan on high heating up. Now a good test is to sprinkle a little bit of water into that cast iron. And if you see that like these little balls of water form and they don't evaporate immediately, you know your pan's hot enough and ready to go. Now be aware that this is going to smoke a lot. Throwing butter and like steak into a hot cast iron, you're gonna get a lot of smoke. I've actually got my sliding glass door behind me open as well as the fan on top of my stove going. But if you have a smoke alarm in the kitchen, be aware of this. So as you saw there, we threw in some slices of butter, and we're throwing our filet mignon straight into the hot pan. Now, as soon as we have that down, we're throwing some whole cloves of garlic in here, as well as some fresh parsley. Now, if I had access to it at the time, I would be using fresh rosemary for this instead, but any sort of fresh herb just adds a little bit extra flavor to that butter. Now in a ripping pan like this, you're only going to be leaving the steak down for 1 to 2 minutes per side. And we're flipping the pan up and using a spoon to baste it with some of that garlic and herb butter that we have going in there as well. As you can see, as soon as we have the two main sides seared, we're going to lift the steak up onto its side and then sear the edges as well. Now, this helps you to lock in the juice and lock in the flavor before you go and finish the steak in the oven. Making sure we're covering every side here. And like I said before, you don't really want to cook this for long here. You just want to get this nice crust to the edge. As you can see, I pull off this little bit extra. I should have cut that off beforehand, but pulling it off here is fine as well. Now remember to keep basting as your steak's searing here. Spooning that garlic butter and the juices from the steak itself back over, it helps to lock in that flavor and really keep your steak juicy and moist and just absolutely delicious. So now we're going to pull our steak out once we have some good color to all the sides here. Remember, don't cook it for more than like 2 minutes a side. You're not trying to cook the steak here, you're just trying to give it a nice sear. So we're putting that in another aluminum foil lined baking sheet and then basting it again before we throw this in the oven. So at this point our potatoes have been going for about 30 minutes or so we're going to pull them out, give them a shake, then just move the asparagus off to the side and then throw our steak in right next to it. After we get our steak in the oven there, we are going to go ahead and put some Parmesan cheese on top of this asparagus. This is garlic parm asparagus. After you get that cheese on there, we're just going to throw that back in the oven, just putting it on top of the potatoes because all we're trying to do is melt that cheese now that the asparagus is fully cooked. After about a couple more minutes here, we're going to pull the asparagus out. Once that cheese is melted, that's ready to go, so we're going to set that off to the side. So now we're finishing everything off, so go ahead and check your potatoes. You want to get these nice and golden brown, extra crispy. And we're checking the thermometer on the steak. Now, I do have a thermometer that you can leave in it. It's not that accurate, so I am using my digital thermometer here. Now, the perfect medium rare is 130 to 135, but you won't pull this out of the oven about 5 degrees before it's done because it will continue to cook. So I pull it out at about 127 degrees Fahrenheit. And you're checking that by sticking that thermometer in the thickest part of the steak. Now as soon as it's out, we're going to lay it out on our cutting board and dump those extra juices that we have in the pan right on top. And we'll give this a cut down the middle and see how it turned out. A little bit on the rare side, but honestly, that's how I prefer my steak. And it will just melt in your mouth. So we're going to go ahead and give this some nice thin slices here. Now, this is entirely personal preference here, but when you're plating, you can cut it however you want. I like to come in some thin slices here that we're going to layer on top of the plate so you can get a nice look at that pink inside. Now we're just laying out our plate here because we got all of our main ingredients done, ready to go. So I'm just laying some of that garlic Parmesan asparagus right onto the plate. Then we're going to throw some of our crispy baked potatoes on here as well. Then for the finishing touches, we're going to lay out our steak real nice right across the middle. And with that, we're finished. Happy eating.